The crypto market is seeing more action than it has in a long time, and it's exciting to see and feel this. Now, often there are pullbacks after little teas like this, but sometimes there aren't. Let's look today into the charts and look much closer at what we're seeing. This is live, and we are prioritizing comments made on the video from last weekend, but we still may have some time for your picks. So let us know what you're interested in and why. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you're looking for crypto news without context, or you're looking for panic selling and FOMOing in, you can find that in a whole lot of other channels and places, but not here. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realized the potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable crypto investor, you're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, if you look down at the subscriber count, you'll see that this isn't the largest channel in all of crypto. And the reason is because you don't grow a huge audience by talking about prices when they're low. You do grow a huge audience by talking about everything after it's pumped massively and helping people FOMO into it. That's just not my way. My way is thinking like an investor. In fact, I'm an investor with a YouTube channel, not a person with a YouTube channel who talks about investing. The reason I created this channel, I was once new to the crypto space 6 years ago. And back then I was looking for a crypto channel and a network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like the investment cycle, specifically the crypto investment cycle, and projects within the crypto market and the pros and cons of those projects, the risks, guesses at upside if it came together well. And I didn't find that, so we created it. And I say we because it isn't just me anymore. It's a family of Rainmakers. You can see them here in the chat. You will see them in the free Telegram group. The link to that's below, and you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to the Rainmaker private Discord. This is where the best discussion and best info is. There are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. Paul is also not a financial advisor. I invest pretty much focused in the crypto market. Paul knows and watches all the different markets out there, so we love having him on and sharing with us his thoughts. Well, if you haven't already, make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show and help us welcome Paul from Definity.
Well, it's another week's gone by and another rally in the crypto market. That's what we'd like to see. It's all sort of going in the right direction, dare I say it. I don't want to jinx it, but it seems to be working.
Yes, it's fun. In some ways, I always get bummed when things really start pumping because I'm like, no, I want more of that at the cheap prices because my entry zone is different. That's how I like it. And so some parts of me are like, of course, I didn't doubt that this was going to happen. So I don't need to see it happen for confirmation that I'm right on these things. However, I know a lot of the audience members are completely relieved. This is their first bear market going into the bull market. And so for them, I'm sure it's relieving to see, oh my gosh, yes, it's finally going the other way. And what a relief that is.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the markets are, they go through their phases. We've said many times you have to ride out the bear market in order to then see the gains or prepare whilst everything's going down, then going sideways. It gets boring. And if you look at the headlines, there's always something to tell you to stay out of the market or to sell or that it's going to go much lower and all that sort of stuff. So it's really important to keep a kind of neutral head. And just from my perspective, I just see everything that's happening in the charts, and all the other news, all the news that comes out is pretty much secondary. And you find that the market tends to tell you where it wants to go, and then the news flow seems to fit in behind it a bit later on. And something that I've learned over the years is that anything that seems like a big deal right now will always fade. Whatever it is, it will always fade. And it happens with all the news media. It happens with everything and anything whether it's market related or not. So no matter how big a scandal happens at one stage, you wait a little while and everybody forgets about it. And it's the same with the markets. All the bearish signals that came out, the bank failures, the debt ceilings, now the war in Israel, market seems to shrug it off. And it's I'm not saying these aren't serious events, because they are, but it's not the event itself, it's how the market responds to those events. And actually, it can be quite surprising how some very smart people, some very well-known names, can actually be on the wrong side of the market sometimes, even though they have been successful. So I think the lesson there is everybody's got their own method of analyzing and investing or trading or whatever it might be, and it's up to each individual to find what works for them. But there's definitely some wrong ways of doing it, invert commas, and the worst way of doing it, I think, would be to look at the headlines and to react to every headline as though it's correct, because you'll tend to find that it won't be. And one of the first lessons I did when I first started in the markets was I kept a diary of what the headlines said and what the share prices did. And it was very interesting to see exactly what happened after the news came out. And most often the market did completely the opposite. So
that was probably extremely helpful for getting a feel for like how the headlines, how the price reacts after the headlines. Probably showed over time that most things then dump after.
yeah, I mean, it's not. It could be that, or it could be some bearish news that's near the end of the move, or it's the way that the media can. And again, I don't want to. It's not a criticism of the media per se. The media 24 hours news is there for a reason. It's feeding people's desire to be kept, inverted commas, informed. And that might be okay if it's sort of normal news channels. But when it comes to the markets, they need to fill space. They need to tell you every tick. Why is it up? Why is it down? Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? And you could follow the headlines of any main channel, and not one's not better than the other. They all tend to do a very similar thing. And the reasons they can call the market up in the morning can be the same reasons they're talking about it going down in the afternoon. So it becomes a game of that's all after the event, not before the event. And as people watching this channel and as investors and traders know, you can't trade in the rear view mirror. You've got to be looking forward and anticipating what's coming next.
Mhm.
And so it's too late once the news decides that it's bearish, or bullish or whatever, that the move may be over. So it's a journey that everybody has to work out, I guess, for themselves. But I found charts very helpful in getting to the bottom of what the mind of the market really is, as opposed to what the news flow is saying.
Yeah, very much agreed. This past week has seen some action in the crypto space. How have the other markets been? So, like
Yeah.
some of the metal markets and some of the other things that you keep an eye on, I'm interested to see what's been happening to them in relation to, say, the dollar index and other things, because Bitcoin's been somewhat bullish. Some of the altcoins, not even ETH, but some of the altcoins have really taken off.
Yeah, we talked about that first move, didn't we, in Bitcoin, and how it would then flow, a natural flow into the altcoins. And that seems to have happened. But for those who are new to the channel, the way I look at things is from a technical point of view, and categorize everything into what might be what's called risk on and what's risk off. So what's a risk on trade? Buying stocks is a risk on trade. If you have money, if you got an inheritance and you end up with a lot of money, you might want to put most of it in the bank, and then you might say, oh, I've got a bit left over and I want to put a risky bet on it that if I lose it, I can afford to lose it. But if it pays off, it might be a really good trade. The market has a similar kind of attitude, and there's certain trades it will take when it's fearful. So when the market's scared, it will move into the dollar because it's a safe haven, US being the biggest and most powerful country in the world. And then you've got the Swiss franc, which is a similar one because it's neutral and it does not get involved in wars. So it will always be neutral. and it has a good banking system, or supposedly has a good banking system. So the Swiss franc tends to be a strong currency. And then you've got more risky currencies, which are things like the Latin American currencies, where they have got more debt and their interest rates are much higher. So if you buy those currencies, you're going to get a better return, but you may also lose money because their economies aren't as stable. So when people want to take risk, what do they buy? They buy stocks, they buy um, currencies that they wouldn't normally hold. And then in the inverse, when they're scared, they bring all that money back. So risk on trades, in simple terms, are trading equities. So if we look at the S&P 500, which represents 500 stocks in the US, the biggest stocks, the strongest stocks, and although this is pulled along a lot of the time by some of the big heavyweight stocks, the tech stocks like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, stocks like that tend to be the most bullish. And yeah, there's lots that aren't doing anything. It comprises a basket. So it's like a classroom. You got some really smart people, you got some not so smart people, and it's an average of those, or an index of those people. So overall, the trend is still bullish on these 500 stocks. Now, we got quite an aggressive correction, and it went a bit lower than I would have liked. Same with the Dow Jones. I think we talked about it over the past couple of weeks, how the trend was correcting down. We were looking for it to bite in at support. And what's very interesting, if we put it back on a daily chart, I've got a weekly chart here, but if we put it on a daily chart, it made a sharp low and then turned around again. And that all came out on a weak non-farm payrolls number. Now, one of the reasons why we can sprinkle in a bit of fundamentals is because we're trying to get into the mind of the market. Now, the market is expecting interest rates to be higher for longer, or Jerome Powell, who is the head of the Federal Reserve in the US and who dictates monetary policy in the US, has been trying to call a really hardball game to the US economy by saying, look, I don't care if equities go down. I don't care what happens. I'm going to hold rates until I see pressure in the until I see weakness in the labor market. So he's not interested in pretty much any other number. Inflation, yes, but mainly the labor market. And whereas before, the market's got into its head that every time there's a big failure or there's a big problem, the Fed will just jump in and push rates down and open up a load of liquidity that will then make the markets go up. So he's trying to break that. But the problem is the market doesn't really believe him. And I don't really believe him, because I know the market dictates what he should do. So as soon as you get things like a war, or you get one of the major banks screaming about interest rates needing to go down, the political pressure on him will just become too much. And last Friday, we got a weak non-farm payrolls number that's starting to make his strategy look bad. And because interest rate moves lag the economy by a long way, all those higher interest rate moves, or the fact that rates have stayed up for so long, they're going to be the effects of them are going to come into next year. So even if they reduce rates now, those effects are still there, hurting the economy. So you've had a stronger dollar, you've had a stronger, I've said it many times, the triple threat has been stronger dollar, higher energy prices, and higher interest rates. And so that is now actually starting to give. And the market, being forward looking, is going, this is great. We are going to see lots more liquidity. The Bitcoin market had underperformed as a risk on asset for a little bit, equities. So equities were relatively higher, but then it snapped back and came up very quickly, caught up fast. The question is, what's going to happen next, of course. And as far as the equity markets go, I'm still not changing my view that things are bullish. The sentiment is extremely bearish. And I think people, even listening to this show, have been wondering why I'm so bullish on the market and thinking that the fundamentals don't back it up. And if that's the case, that's for me, that's perfect. The more people who disagree, actually, the better, for the reasons I was talking about in the top of the show. So, so the S&P, very nice rebound. May have a bit of a correction before it goes up, but I think we're going to see a rally into the year end. The VIX index, which represents fear, so this is like a fear trade, as obviously it went up a lot straight after the events in Israel, but it's come all the way back down and lower. So that's now stabilizing and looking like the market has kind of calmed down. And I'm not saying that the situation over there will necessarily calm down. It's not. I'm not one for politics. I'm not one for geopolitics either. But I am one for how the market reacts to these things. So all of these things have then pushed. Well, let's have a look at 10-year yields. See, 10-year yields, US 10-year bonds, the interest rate has dropped from 5% all the way down to 4.5%. So that's come off significantly. It may come even lower. So that's longer term borrowing is becoming cheaper, which is a really good sign. Hey, hello, let's watch the housing market go up because they're going to like that. And then what's happened to the dollar? Well, the dollar was in this massive upward trend. This was around the peak that I was potentially looking for the market to turn around. It made a top and then went back up for another move. Now, last week, it was around here that I was saying we had to be careful because if it went through this high, it could extend because it was such an important level. But my favorite view was that the dollar comes down, of course, but I needed to see confirmation. And last week was such an important, pivotal week for the markets. And I'm pleased to say it's kind of gone in our favor, i.e. the index has gone down, the dollar index is weakening. So the dollar weakening is good for US stocks. It means that they can sell their goods abroad and get more money for their products. So it's effectively a bit like the market giving it an interest rate cut. And it's also anticipating where interest rates are going as well. So people will start to sell the dollar if they think, well, actually the Fed aren't going to keep rates as high as they thought they are. So they're going to start to bail out of their long dollar positions and move into currencies that will pay them a bit more. So it's a bit like if you could only trade in cryptocurrencies, you might consider the safest one Bitcoin, but if you wanted to invest in things that are a bit more risky, you might invest in altcoins, and the smaller the altcoin, obviously, the greater the risk. But if you thought things weren't doing that great, you might pull all your investments from the smaller coins and move back into the heavyweight ones. But if you think things are going to go really well and there's going to be a broad rally, you might want to invest in things that are a bit more risky and move into the altcoins where you're going to get double, treble, 5x, 10x in certain cases and take a bit more risk. So the market follows a kind of sentiment that we're always trying to gauge whether it's too much one way, too much another, and how things flow between all of those markets. So at the moment, I think the dollar's topped, and I think that's a really good sign, because if it has, it means interest rates are either going to stay stable or go down, which is good for equities, which means that there's more money to flow into Bitcoin and from Bitcoin into all the other altcoins. So we could have a really interesting period. Put that on top of the presidential year next year, which we were talking about, and the halving of Bitcoin. A few things are coming together. So it could be really interesting.
Completely agreed. Yeah, almost always the interest rates come down the year of U.S. presidential election. And so I just see all these pressures on the Fed. I can't imagine that they don't bring interest rates down. And if they do that, it should juice possibly even every single market as far as real estate, equities, and also crypto. So I'm really curious and excited to watch how it plays out this coming year. I think it's going to be an exciting time. All right. What else are you keeping an eye on? So the dollar indexes maybe come off the new highs that it hit. Like they're not all-time highs, but it maybe has topped.
Yeah, I mean,
that's exciting.
The top was. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. Yeah, this was the top. This was the main top, which happened, September 22. So this collapsed, and then we've been in a downward trend. And for people who've been watching the channel for a long time, you'll know that I was looking for a break of this 100 spot 82 as a continuation of that trend. but the market just flipped, and it was quite unusual because this looked like quite a nice top, but it just went on this tear that took all the highs out and was, a pretty strong rally. So around this time, when was that? I'm just going back. Yeah, around January, I thought the market might have a rebound, but I thought that was it. I thought that was it when it broke here. So this move, funnily enough, when you see look at markets for a long enough time, certain things happen in a way that makes it look like the market knew something before everybody else. So I would say, given the geopolitical risk that's going on now, I would be buying dollars because it seems like things are going to get worse. The amount of people I've heard say the words World War III has gone up a lot, and yet the dollar looks like it's at the end of a move, not the beginning of a move. So regardless, this was a very unusual rally, but actually the news now kind of fits as to why it has rallied to this point. But the market is always forward looking, so it's over. That move is over potentially. Okay, I can't say anything 100%, but I feel like this move is over. The dollar will have a lot further to fall, and if it does, all we'll see, instead of things getting worse, we'll see things getting better in terms of geopolitical risk. And we may see the economy actually looking weaker, but the market will like that, paradoxically, because the weaker the market looks, the more chance of interest rate cuts. And the more chance of interest rate cuts, the further ahead the market will be looking for greater profits. Weaker dollars, interest rates going down, energy prices have fallen. We've got now triple support for the economy. So things can flip. And because data lags, it takes a while for the people who use economics to kind of work out what's happening. So as far as this goes, even if rates stay stable, even if they don't move, the market will be happy. And the dollar, as long as the dollar weakens, and as long as longer term interest rates don't keep going up, even if they do, even if they just kind of move slowly with inflation, that's still fine. We just don't want rates to be, well, they were yanked up too fast. I think that should have been done much slower. And you saw the effects that had. I mean, it caused bank failures. But it's a question of how well can the market absorb these problems. So if the banks and the economy has money to spare, then they'll absorb it. If they're just on the wire, then they won't be able to, and you'll see a greater reaction. So what we're seeing in the markets is that they're quite happy to absorb these bearish situations and deal with the aftershocks of certain bank failures or certain economic problems. One bank will buy another bank and deal with the assets, and in a few years' time, it will look like an amazing buy at a really cheap price. But when the market's ready to turn, which it will be at some point, and we'll discuss that when we get there, it will be a really awful time to be doing something like that, and it will have greater consequences, and it will be an opportunity to get out. So for now, it looks like we're on the upward path, and most buying opportunities will come from a retracement, in my view.
Awesome. Let's dive into the Bitcoin chart, which has been interesting, and then we'll look at some altcoins.
So
a few comments real quick. Wanchain PK Torres.
Okay.
There's Wanchain analysis, please. We'll probably have time to add that in. They are a strategic partner.
Funnily enough, I had a quick look at that, and I was wondering, I wonder what Wanchain's been doing. I hope it's moving up, and I had a quick look, and it is moving up. But I'll let you tell me when we can look at it. But so Bitcoin, this sharp move. Usually, when markets have a sharp move like this, they continue. So it's a question of where the market is waiting for a pullback in order to jump on, and when you get a really good move like this, it just does not give you that move. And so it can be very frustrating. So that for people who haven't bought before, that's why it's really important to be watching it while it's boring, because when it becomes interesting, it becomes very hard to trade. So as far as the chart goes, this could easily do another spike up at the same rate easily. So we could be looking at this 41,968 level much quicker than we expect, or the market expects. But when the market is moving this quickly as this, you have to realize that you've got to be much more fluid with your views. You can't, I call this a much more volatile period, whereas people would say that this is volatile. I mean, I guess it depends what you're considering to be volatile, but anything that can move this amount of points in a few days or even in a day, you've got to be careful. You really do. But as far as the technicals goes, it's moving in the main direction of the trend, and therefore my bias will always be to the upside. We talked about this all being a base. It's now broken through resistance. It's having a consolidation. I would have liked it to have moved on this day, on the 2nd of November, because this was a little continuation pattern that we discussed last week, and the market usually moves at the same rate out of the consolidation as it moved in. Now it's moving up at it's moving up in a way, if you can look at how it's sidestepping rather than just going straight up, that's a little bit of a concern. I think what's happening is people who trade these oscillators are looking at it and saying, look, it's overbought, we got to short it here. So it's absorbing some short positions, and it will do that maybe just for a bit longer, and then it will just go straight up. Because these oscillators, you've got to know when to use them, and this is not the time to be using them. And so potentially this has got another squeeze in it. Now, I could be wrong. You know, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it comes back down. Even if it does, it gives you another chance. Gives me another chance to get in and buy. You know, great. The trend is up. I'm going to be bullish into next year and possibly beyond. So even if it's not a short-term buy, it is from a long-term perspective. So I'm sticking with that. Bitcoin led the way. Now there's a bit of a renaissance in some of the other moves. So we've got, even today, we've got ETH is showing a little bit of outperformance, but Bitcoin led the way. So this is looking really good still. It hasn't given up much of its gains. It's still near the high, and there could be another squeeze. And that, even if altcoins don't move this week and next week and this happens, there will be a delayed move and altcoins should follow. But from what I can see and what we've been looking at lately, a lot of the altcoins have been making basing patterns. So more look bullish than bearish, if that makes sense, which is a great sign for a broader bull market.
Yeah, it's exciting to see this take off, and for what I'm excited about, the coming bull market, and there should be a bull market. The chances are really, really high that we'll have a strong crypto bull market in the coming year, maybe a little bit longer than that. Is that a lot of the audience that stuck around after 2021, they were pretty new. And the first cycle, as people come in, they're just learning how to do this, and they usually get wrecked. They don't know when to take profits. They don't set enough to the side, and that's normal for it to happen that way. What makes people exceptional is when they stick around during the bear market, and not only do they learn, but they dollar cost average. So then they enter their first bull market that they're well prepared for. And that's when massive results happen. And so I'm really excited for a lot of our family. I think this coming bull market is going to be very life-changing for a number of them. Let's jump in over to some of the altcoins, starting with XRP.
Sure. If I could just make one comment about dollar cost averaging. Unleveraged, the word unleveraged is extremely important, because if you're leveraged and you try to dollar cost average, you can end up with a lunar situation, and you're buying into something that is just going to go to hell in a handbasket, and you're adding good money after bad. So you have to be careful with what you're doing, what you're averaging in, and what money you're using to do that. So if it's a well thought out strategy, and and you are quite happy to see it at low levels as a buying opportunity once you've done your research, then and you've put the money aside as risk capital, that's fine. If you're buying it because you're annoyed that you've lost and the market's come against you, which is what happens most of the time, then you may be lucky and you may get out of it, but that's usually a sign that you've got the wrong trade. So just be careful, because the market ends up being a game of psychology rather than anything else, and so the market will do things to kind of make you make a mistake, if that makes sense. So just be careful about that. So yeah,
on leverage, it is the greatest way to be right and still get wrecked. And so I
yeah,
don't recommend, because you might be wrong just for a second before you're right, and you get whipped out of your position, you lose massively, and yet you were right. So in crypto, it's like the volatility is high enough. You don't need leverage. Leverage just increase your risk to unacceptable levels, in my opinion. So I don't use leverage at all anymore. In fact, leverage cost me really over $1 million, probably $2 million, because last bear market, I thought I would learn to trade with leverage. And it was a really great learning mistake that, number one, I don't need to do incredible. And number two, if I do, I can be right, but be wrong ever so slightly for a second and lose a bunch of money, which then ruins some future positions I have. So yeah, leverage, I don't do it at all. And it's only good to dollar cost average down on things that you fundamentally research really, really well. And you know that they're surviving and thriving and they're just getting punished. That's why I say 70% of the crypto market is complete crap. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's the remaining 30% that can be interesting, but then you're vetting through that remaining 30% to look for the top 1 to 3% of the whole crypto market that might be undervalued massively as the market gets punished. And that's what you're looking for. But that takes research, fundamental analysis, and time.
Sure thing. So on XRP, I was going to use TradingView, but I think we've got a bit more data on this particular setup here for some reason. But in any case, there's signs of life, which is really, really good. We look at the lows that are rising, starting to accelerate, which is an interesting technical sign. We've got the resistance points around 0.9 where it stopped last time, there and there, and just below that at 0.86. So they're in a very similar zone. I would suggest that overall I'm bullish on it, because I mean, I'm not saying I would buy this first, but if I was just looking at this chart, there's no reason for me to say that it shouldn't move in the main direction higher. So I can't fault it. That's the first thing I would say. I can't find a reason to say I don't want to buy it. Now that doesn't guarantee that it will go up. It's just saying that there's no red flags in terms of the price action at this stage. So the recent rally is quite aggressive, but we've seen that before. We've seen it a few times, but each time it stopped, was sold into. That's pretty much because there's tons of resistance around here. That was people who had bought it and then they bought it again and they bought it again and then were holding it, stale longs, just exiting and licking their wounds as the market bounced back up. So so what we've got here is we've got a breakout. There's obviously some really good news. My dog's just come into the room, so sorry about that.
That's all right. He's like, give me some attention. Give me some attention.
Yeah. I should call him Crypto, shouldn't I? So my so yeah, so we got a breakout to the upside, and we're just recovering those points. So those are this is the interesting about XRP. It's coming back to this breakout point or this resistance point. I think that might have been on an announcement, and obviously anyone who bought it is now again having to ride it and hold it. So I want to see what it does when it gets back to those points, and if it can break through there, then we have got a major base. But this to me always looked a bit like it was basing anyway. It happened a bit earlier. It happened before Bitcoin had moved, and so it jumped the starting gun, if you like. But now, where we are now in the kind of macro scene, that just means looking at all the markets together, it's got a much better chance of being sustainable. So if I could only trade this, I would buy it here, looking to see how it reacts if it gets to this level, see how it reacts. If it gets through it, then I think, it should be a good solid contender for a much bigger rally with the rest of the market. So for me, I'm bullish at this stage, and unless it breaks that pattern highs, rising lows, I should say, until it does that, I would, stay broadly bullish on it.
Now, broadly bullish, is that a buy or is that a wait?
No, it's a buy.
Okay. Cool. For me, I like XRP a lot. They did all of the crypto community a huge favor by, well, contending with the SEC trying to declare it a security, and they probably could have settled it, much as EOS and a lot of other companies had. But instead, they spent $200 million in legal fees to fight it, and that is no small amount. That is a devastating amount, even for a company as big as them. Because think about what they could have done with that 200 million, being able to put that into their own team and their own technology. So they did everyone a favor by fighting that, and I'm eternally grateful to them for that. Overall, their market cap is just above where I like to go. Now, some in our private Discord community that follow the ISO 222 coins, 2020, boy, all those numbers in there. They have made a strong case that even though the market cap is so high, if adoption comes in certain ways with XRP and it starts getting used for transmitting funds all the time, that then a lot of the supply goes into use. And so the amount of available supply that people are trying to sell goes down, and that the token can go 100x from here. Generally, things at a market cap already at 36 billion don't go 100x. But keep in mind, it's far below the market cap of where it was. This is all the way back in 2017. And part of the reason it didn't pump during this period is they had the overhang of the SEC lawsuit that really diminished what it could have done in that bull market. And so they'll probably break to new highs, is my guess, this coming bull market. Now, will it go 100x from here? I would love to see it. I would love to see the founders that put this together and stuff, and the people who supported them, do incredibly well. It's just a lower risk of that, or a lower chance of that happening, in my opinion. So I don't hold any XRP presently. I'm mostly in riskier stuff. As Paul was saying, if you believe that the general market, the overall general market, is going to do really well, sometimes when you're in the riskier plays, well, then you have higher multiples. And that's a lot of where I'm at. So I do rate this generally as a buy, even though I don't hold any. I think it's going to do much better from here. I'm just in riskier stuff that I hope has higher multiples. All right, let's take a look next at Illuvium. Illuvium is one of those riskier things that I hope has higher multiples.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this either last week or a couple of weeks ago in terms of the breakout. I think we may have looked at it before it broken out and then after it had broken out. So we were looking for a pattern of these lower highs to be broken in order to justify a technical breakout, or not I was. What we had was a matching of the prior low at $38, which is a really important support. As you can see, it was being pressed into that. Problem with these levels is if it breaks it, it goes straight down, and there is extensive selling. And most often it does it. It actually breaks the low. When it gets that close, it's almost like, well, I'm here now. I may as well break those levels. But this didn't manage to do it. It turned around. And again, I think we looked at that turnaround and how there was a change in market dynamics. So the question here is, where next? And this whole area is beginning to look like a massive base. And so $105, believe it or not, is the breakout point that then confirms the base. That's quite far away, but it's on its way. So retracements aside, pullbacks aside, if it does come back to, say, $54, that to me should be good support and a potential buy area. Looking for 105 as a breakout. If it's a base and it recovers some of this prior trend, there's plenty of upside. So this could be looking really interesting. So it's turning around. It's not made a full base, but it's on its way. And in that regard, I'd rate it, for me, a buy.
Fantastic. I love this one. Now, I love this one a lot more at $40 than $65. And I talked about this multiple times when it was down at those prices. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy. I can't believe these prices ever happened. Now, the risky part of that is I don't just dollar cost average on things that are down like Paul was cautioning against, because it's right. If you're just trading on the charts, you aren't spending massive amounts of time looking at the team beneath it, what's going on. It is a lot of work and effort to figure out, is the company solid? Are they even going to make it through the bear market? Because otherwise you're just chasing good money after bad when you dollar cost average into something that's doing really, really low, and you're not looking at, are they even going to survive? So there was lots of reasons to suspect that Illuvium would survive if you were following it really, really closely. And that's what I suspected. Now, can I say I knew? Well, in crypto, you don't know. You just are making educated guesses. And so this area was just so juicy. I was absolutely loving it and picked up some more myself, even though the market cap is higher than I normally like. Now, obviously, it's not in the billions at present, but and it's gone up some from it's almost 2x from where it was really juicy. But I like this project. I still like this project at these prices. Although I'm a lot more cautious at the $78, hoping for a retracement. And I don't know if that retracement is going to happen, but what I get nervous about is, notice how it's coming up close to this previous high. The chances that it bounces off that and comes back down for some cheaper prices, the chances get pretty high that it will hit that resistance and come back down. And so I don't like to buy right before that unless I put stop losses immediately in. And usually when I'm buying, I'm not taking the short-term swing trades like that. I'm taking longer trades. They're going to be for several months to maybe even a year or 2 years sometimes. Now, I don't know that we have 2 years until the top of the bull market. So almost none of the trades I'm taking now are for the next full 2 years, unless that's how long it takes to happen. But my guess is the top of the bull market comes sooner than that. So, but I have been buying over this bear market. And so much of the stuff that I've been buying will end up be holding for a total of 2 years. So this would be, even if I was buying here, it would be a shorter term trade, maybe 6 months or 12 months or whenever the blow off top happens. And that's what I'm waiting for, is a massive, crazy run up, blow off top. But would I be buying right here? I would be looking at other things that haven't pumped yet and waiting to see if it comes back down. Even though I absolutely love this project, I love the use case of their ILV token. And while it was down here, I rated it as a massive, massive buy and was buying myself. So for me, it's a wait at these prices. And I hate to say that, but it just is. I mean, on the charts, I want to see, and hopefully it bounces off that support and comes, or resistance comes right back down. We'll see. Let's jump over to Netvrk, which is a metaverse play. And I'm curious to take a look at the price action. I haven't looked at it in quite a while. Uh-oh, we lost audio on you, Paul. It's got you on.
Me came back in the room. So apologies. So here we go. Very good rally in the last few days, as we can see. What's important about that is so I'm trying to read that comment that's just come through about Robert Downey Jr. I was like,
the discussion we had last week.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. Yes, I do love that. Robert Downey Jr. is going to come. They've come to their senses. See, we called it on this show, didn't we? We called it. They must have been listening. They've gone, Paul's really pissed off. We better do something about this. Get Robert Downey Jr. on the phone.
What happened. Oh, crap. We've lost Paul in the UK.
Exactly.
we're going to reverse
exactly.
course.
Yeah, that's must have been what happened. But that's made my day, that news, potentially. So thank you for that. So Netvrk, very strong rally in the last few days, isn't it? So obviously it's woken up anybody who was short and people who were waiting for an opportunity to get out, who obviously people, all the buying that's been going on the way down here, people will be thinking, do I take profits here, or do I, cut my losses, I should say, or do I hold it? And of course they're going to want to hold it. It's a thinly trade market, you can see it already, so it's not a big one. And the smaller the market, the more cautious you have to be about manipulation. But and when I say manipulation, what I mean is technical analysis works when you've got more people whose influence becomes less and less, because you want to see how crowds react. You're looking for the bigger crowd reactions in the markets. And when it gets down to smaller numbers, it's harder to predict. So it's harder to predict what one person would do compared to a crowd, but it's much easier to predict what a crowd will do en masse. So what's happening here is we've got this really good rally, which is saying that this is the end of this trend, or it should be, because it's the strongest rally that we've had since the bear market started. Now it's traded in a really nice head and shoulders top, which is usually a sign that the market is going to turn from bullish to bearish. So it's got a really nice technical pattern, even though the direction may not have been nice for people who are holding it. And that was the start of the bear market, and we could not call a reversal until we got some form of signal that said this had ended. So we'd have to stay bearish from here until we see some sign. Now, the first sign is a break of the major downward trend line. So that's an initial warning, but it's sometimes not enough to definitely jump in. Now, the rate that it's gone up is difficult to jump on right here because it's come right into resistance. So we'd like a pullback if possible, but sometimes you don't get it. So it just really depends on the broader market sentiment. And we're kind of seeing that in Bitcoin, where it may not give people a chance to get in. It may go up really aggressively from here. So the headline is, yeah, it's a buy. Will we get a pullback to get into it? I'm not sure. We should do. It may go a little bit more than pullback because we've got resistance, a lot of resistance coming up. But either way, I think this is telling us it's the end of the trend. So I personally, especially with the metaverse play, which I'm quite into, I think a retracement, I wouldn't mind a retracement if it came back to 12.5. I think fair enough. If it's 50% of this move, great. And then I'd be looking for it to continue up. So for me, it's a buy. I'd have to put a stop in somewhere. My stop would be below, this sort of 10 cents area. I'd have to, it'd be annoying if it got hit, and I'd have to jump back in. But that's the way I look at things. I need a parachute level, and it just means sometimes a good trade gets taken out, as you were saying before. It's worse if you do it on leverage, but otherwise, if it was sort of money that I would just put in and forget about, I'd be happy to wait for the cycle to turn on the metaverse plays, because when we look at meta stock, it's still doing very well. So I think there will be a big winner in there somewhere. So it may be worth a bit of coffee money, as you call it, to find out which ones it's going to be. So in summary, for me, it's a buy. It's showing that it's ended this trend, or it's giving good signals that it's ended the trend. May come back for a pullback because that would make more sense in terms of a base. But let's look at it in a few weeks. This definitely is on the radar.
Yeah, it's fun to have this kind of action, and a lot of the community, right? If you look at this chart, this is what a lot of the bear market has been like, with prices just falling like this. And it can be frustrating. A lot of them haven't seen what happens from here when it does go massively good. And is it ready for these plays to continue running? I don't know. I don't have a magic crystal ball. The methodology I take works really well for me over the longer period, applied with some patience, because I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 2 months. But the chances that it happens sometime within the next 18 months are really, really strong. And what I'm looking for isn't this little pump that we've seen here. This is what gets Paul's attention, where he starts to make entries, because he knows what then often follows the trend reversal too. And when the trend reverses, the gains over that reversal time are quite big. And that's kind of when Paul waits. You're noticing a lot of these things are buys. He's starting to see signs that the trend has reversed. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting time as that continues, whether it continues right away or it's into next year before things run up more. Cool. So what I'm looking at on Netvrk is their market cap at 13 million, which is quite a bit lower than a lot of the stuff. This is a juicy range for me, especially since 62% of their tokens are in circulation. I like to see that. Now, I don't actually hold any of Netvrk's tokens presently. I did buy them before the previous bull market and did incredibly well on the tokens. I used a lot of the gains to buy a ton of their land, and I'm just holding that land, and the land hasn't really pumped yet, and that's okay. I'm just going to wait for it, because usually the land pumps kind of come later as people really start getting into the metaverse place, and that's what I'm waiting for. So the token right now is a wait for me too. I would just like to see it come back down, and if I missed it, I missed it, but it's right close to these resistance levels. I would prefer to see it bounce off them and come back down. Some people get worried when that happens. I get excited because I think Paul's right, and we're seeing a trend reversal signal here. I'm just hoping for a little bit better buys. Not that this is a bad buy, because in a bull market, this could go to $1, it could go to $10, it could go higher. So it's got, I mean, even before it went all the way to $7. So from here, if it even went to the previous highs, that is a 35x. That's a really big run from even at present prices. But I'd like to see it come down to 16 cents or 14 cents, or really at 12 cents. I'd get pretty excited again. Cool. Let's jump to our next one, which is VET.
So VET was, again, one of those ones that was making lower highs and pressing against support, but the bigger picture chart looked good. So we were waiting for evidence that buying had come in to create a base. That's moved more into the bull case from a kind of neutral case before. And what I like about this is if you look at the way these lows are played out, so we've got this low, flattened off to this low. This is a higher low. This is another higher. Sorry, that's a higher low, another higher low, and it's starting to accelerate. So I think this is going to move kind of straight away, really, because it's starting to accelerate up. So this is one where the market is looking around for things that haven't moved to jump on, as opposed to the ones that have already moved. So the second wave of buying in the altcoins, whether it's sustainable or not, I don't know, but it just feels like this wants to go a bit more. Where the resistance comes in is around 3.2 cents to 3.3 cents. This resistance area here, it's where it failed before. So obviously we've got to be careful around that point. But if it breaks out from there, that would create a very, very nice base. And as I say, the big picture chart is bullish as well. So there's a few things that are pushing on the bull side for me. So I would say it's a buy here. It's speculative, but it's a buy. And I'd like to see what it does if and when it gets to this area here. But if everything else is moving high, I'd be very surprised to see it not break through there. Where the disappointment would come in is if it breaks below this 0.017. So 1.17 of a cent would tell me that it's failed, or not failed, but it's gone back into a neutral zone. And where it become a sell is if it breaks this low, because that's a really massive support. So I wouldn't expecting it to do that. And if it does it when everything else is moving up, that's a really bad warning sign. But it's not doing it, hasn't done it. So for me, at this point in time, it's a buy.
Awesome. I think I missed Randall L's comment as far as the timing. I think he's talking about Netvrk's private beta 3 launching 11/28. I think that's the private beta he's talking about there. BCE makes a really good statement. We're disbelief face. We are almost like how Yoda would say it. I think so, right? The disbelief and what's fun is I remember this feeling last bear market going into the bull market, and it was like you start to get your hopes up after having them dash continuously, and you're like, I suspect this would be good, but I don't want to get my hopes up yet because I've had them dash so many times. And so I'm going to be patient and wait to see how it plays out, because whether it's now or in 6 months from now or even 12 months from now, it's fine. Like, I know where it's going to go. And I was pretty confident last bear market going into the bull because I had played those swings in real estate and a little bit stocks, but a lot in real estate before. And so I had a pretty good feel that it was going to play out like I was hoping, though I didn't know the exact time, and it did. This time, I'm even more confident because I've been in the crypto space long enough to know, and it felt just like this. All right, let's take a look at Mcade. Oh, my feelings on that, I guess I didn't jump into. I like VeChain because VeChain is supply chain management, and I think blockchain can add a ton to supply chain management, and that's the narrative that this is in. They can put in little microchip indicators and track it on the blockchain so that not only can all the relevant businesses see exactly where things are at, they can make certain things open to the public to be able to see, like, how long things were in the warehouse, and it really helps them track quality management. Now, does something like this have to be on the blockchain? No, but for certain things, there are major benefits to it being on the blockchain, because already private companies on centralized systems do some of this, but some of it has, like, for example, VeChain, like Louis Vuitton. You want to know that the Louis Vuitton, whether they're shoes or a purse or whatever that you're buying for your girlfriend or whatever, or your wife or somebody, you want to know that it's legitimate and it's not like manufactured somewhere else. And so that's one of the things that blockchain can really do, is that you can track it, and there might be chips inside of things that you can scan with your phone, and the history. And when you go to sell the purse, you can then transfer it to, and so it tracks chain of ownership. And that's what the blockchain is really, really exceptional at. So I would rate it as a buy because you are starting to see the turnaround, and I'm glad somebody brought this up today. Am I buying it? Well, the market cap's just too high for me to be buying it, and it's not like I don't like blue chips. I like blue chips. I'm just in the riskier space. I just want higher multiples this bear market going into the bull market. Then after this, I'm probably going to be a lot more focused on blue chips in the next cycle personally. So I wanted that I was in riskier positions, or 2 bear markets going into the bull market that I was in riskier positions so that I could get the higher multiples. Then after you reach a certain level, then I'm just going to be more safe with probably a few very specified risky investments, but generally more in the blue chips. But right now I hold almost no blue chips. Let's take a look at our next one, which is Mcade.
Yes. So Mcade, this is obvious. Well, I say obviously, there isn't a lot of history here. And I had a quick look on Coin Market Cap just to make sure I was looking at the right one. Funny thing with this, or not funny, but the thing with this is it's not given the up-to-date price. It's showing 5th of November. So I was just checking to see the next couple of days to see if we got an up-to-date price, which we have. It doesn't look like it's moved much from the current price or the price from the 5th. So I'm going to use this chart, even though the data isn't completely up to date, but it looks like from the other chart, we can see it's still in this range and hasn't done anything different. So that caveat aside, obviously a new chart in terms of the amount of time from May till now. It's not very long that it's been trading for. So that raises the kind of risk levels up quite a few notches. Trend has been down and then flattening off since October. So it ended that bear phase with quite a sharp bull move, but then it's gone sideways from here. So it's like it wants to go up, but there's just something not quite ready about it. So I'm going to be going to say that this is a wait for me, just because I think you've got to be a bit extra cautious on anything that doesn't have a lot of history. I'd rather wait for the breakout at 0.008, which is the point of the last two resistance areas, and it's coming here as support as well. It's not the main one. That's around a cent. So around a cent is the next level, the next big level. But 0.08, I should say, would be the first buy point. I'd say, okay, that's nice. It's been going up since here. It's broken through short-term resistance. Now we're going to go to this one, and we'll look for acceleration. Aside from that, it's really difficult to make a view on it, or to give a longer term trading view, because there really isn't a lot of data. But I guess what we could do here is just put in this upward trend line. Whilst it's above that line, I could say I'm going to play the bull side given the macro situation. If it breaks that line, I'm going to bail out and just keep it simple, really.
Cool.
It's a wait for me at this point.
Okay.
But if it breaks 0.008 resistance up here, then I'm going to go long. Then I would buy it.
Because then you're getting confirmation that is likely ready to,
yeah,
the reversal may likely be in.
Yeah, I want to give it a little hurdle, one more little hurdle just to break it. And then I would use this trend line as a kind of parachute out if it breaks it.
Yeah, I want to use that note is just emphasize something that's really important in any market, not just crypto, but in crypto with the volatility, especially where a lot of new people coming in go wrong, is they're actually kind of just emotionally buying because they haven't learned how to stack the odds in their favor. Because in investment, you're still just taking risks. You're still just making guesses. Now, they might be educated guesses, but they are just guesses. And sometimes people come in this space and they're like, I want surety. There is no surety. You're just taking risks. But as you become good, you're learning how to take risks where the odds are stacked in your favor rather than against you. So what Paul likes to see is reversal indicators, and then it's broke above that. And what he's doing is he's stacking the odds in his favor of a positive return. Are there any guarantees? No. And so that's the risk profile that he looked for, and his rules that he looked for, because those rules allow him to stack the odds in his favor rather than against him. And this is what sophisticated investors do. And we have different rules. Like, I'm more of a longer term swing trader, trading on fundamentals, and I have my rules. Paul has his rules, and they're both rules in ways that we stack the odds in our favor. And that's what, when people are new, they just don't know how to do this. And that's where the education process comes in learning to be a solid, unshakable crypto investor. And what unshakable means is you're not shaken out by the emotions because you're trading based on your rules. All right. For me, what I'm looking at with Mcade is a little bit of fundamentals. So we see the price action here. Mcade is an ultimate Web3 community hub where gamers and blockchain fanatics can communicate and collaborate. Our vision is to create a fun, dynamic, virtual hangout for like-minded people to enjoy all things GameFi and experience everything that our Web3 culture has to offer. Now, are they getting a lot of traction? Not yet. Will they? They might. If you look at their website, it's pretty good. So you get their community, and it looks like, they're using Polygon. Whoa. Little bit about some of the games. So Ember Sword, which is a game that I've followed. It's a partner game, which then, so what this seems to me is more like a decentralized Steam. So you can probably come in, connect your wallet, buy some things directly from here. You can then maybe even launch the games from here. And so they're hoping to make it a hub that a lot of people come to learn about what games are coming up, kind of like Steam is. And if they're successful at that, should do really well. Now, possibly when the bull market comes, whether they're massively successful or not at getting tons of traction, generally a rising tide rises all boats. And so likely in a gaming bull run, or when the gaming narrative really takes off, this will probably take off too. So at this price, I like this nice slow rounded bottom, and it looks like it's wanting to reverse. And so this is actually a buy zone for me. In order to make any substantive buys on this, I would just want to know more about the team behind it. But I like the narrative that they're in and what they're working on. And I think the gaming narrative, I am looking for more interesting blockchain gaming narratives. So this one is pretty interesting to me. A few things you notice, it's on Uniswap and X Market, so it's not on a whole lot of exchanges, BitGet and Bitmart. Some people see that as a bad thing. Sometimes that's part of the reason the price is suppressed, and later on, as the market really takes off, it is harder than normal to get on exchanges now, as they're being extra cautious because of the US SEC. That will probably at some point get resolved. We'll see how the Coinbase lawsuit fight goes. If Coinbase wins that in a massive way, then probably that pressure will really back off. All right. Yeah, so for me, it's a buy at that price. Let's jump into our next one, Spores. Then we have Engine Starter, and then we'll have time just to look at one or two of the suggestions in the comments.
Okay, so this is again one that we thought we'd seen the end of the bear market around January because it rallied with everything else, and it was just again too early for the macro cycle. So this is a really good rally, really good beginning of a new bull phase. The only problem is it gave up so much of that first phase, it looked like that was it. But quite a few altcoins did that. If you notice, they went down, had this spike, and that spike point, which is here, marked the end of that correction. So that's a really interesting point. And you look at the volume there, you can see that there was a lot of selling going on, panic selling. Importantly, it did not get below the previous low. It was higher, and it's continued to be higher. So if you were in it and you wanted to sell, that was probably the point where most people got shaken out. What's happening now is the trend is slowly again recovering. It's come back to that where we are today is such an important point because it's come right back to that big panic sell. So it might find some resistance there because there's people who bought it, and are just looking to get their money back from the buy at that level. So quite an emotional level is where we are now. But that aside, from the big picture, I think the end of the trend still mainly happened in January. And so it's had its first wave up, correction. This is now the next phase that should take it beyond this previous high. Now, there's no guarantees there, but that's what I would expect given what is happening with all the other markets. So it's giving you enough good signals to say it's worth for me to put some money into it. And have a look to see what it does if it gets to this point. If it does that, it would have created what we call a double bottom, which is a base rally, then a base. The base does not have to be, the second base does not have to be higher, but it would be in this case. And that would make it look really interesting. So where we are now, it's still possibly a bit early, but I don't mind that. But I would rate it a tentative buy here.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad somebody suggested this today. The prices aren't as juicy on this as they were, but they're still extremely juicy. Look at this market cap. It's under $1 million market cap. Now, last December, one of my gold Patreon members had asked me what some of my top picks were. And I said Bumper, I said Spores. So this is where the prices were back then, like drastically low. And the chart just looked like it was falling off the cliff, but I was still seeing action from the team that they were working and doing things. And I really think they have really good connections to the Asian blockchain gaming market, which I think is going to be huge. Now, a lot of people focus on US consumers because the money spent per capita per person in for Americans is usually pretty high. In the gaming space, Asians actually spend more than Americans do on their gaming experiences. And so it's a fantastic place to be. And I think it's going to be a hub of a lot of the blockchain gaming innovation. It's already a hub for a lot of the regular gaming innovation. And Spores has incredible connections in the Asian market, like most of the crypto space does not have. They also have huge Western connections. So they have connections in both those markets. And I think that's going to become really valuable. So even though their price is up, I would rate it a buy. Is it as juicy as it was? No, it was really juicy here. And then it pumped 10x from there. And then they actually had a problem that where you could stake some of their tokens on somebody else's platform. I guess that platform got hacked. And the hackers took a bunch of the tokens, dumped them on the market, which caused this big fall off. And so you've seen it take a while to return from that. But still, the overall market cap is abysmally low and incredibly cheap. And so if this does well in as the bull market takes off, the Spores is a launchpad. Launchpad tokens become very, very valuable because you have to hold enough to be able to get allocations in the newly launching projects. And a lot of the top newly launching projects, if you're able to get an allocation in them, sometimes it's almost instant money. Sometimes you get the tokens vested to you the day that you bought them. And I once got an allocation for like $350 that later that day, the token, or 2 days later, the token went, that $350 allocation turned into about $19,000. So launchpads can become extremely valuable, and that's when Spores will absolutely take off. So great suggestion. It's a buy for me even at that price, only because this market cap is so juicy. I don't love that it's way up from where it was, but I still think it's massively underpriced. So let's take a look along the same lines at another gaming launchpad, which is Engine Starter. And you'll see that the market cap on Engine Starter is a lot higher than Spores, though they often have, they have comparable connections. Engine Starter just has a bigger name, but oftentimes they launch similar projects.
So the downward trend in Engine Starter, well, I mean, that was fierce, and it was you know, from a technical point of view, interesting, but obviously if you're in it, that's not the word you want to use. Since this base again in January, same thing really. We saw a base in January. We got this first phase of the rally, but April 23 was just too early for the cycle. So it retraced back to the previous support around 3 cents, which was where this resistance came in. So resistance reverses as support, and we're now starting another rally. I've got this on a weekly chart because it smooths out the prices a little bit, and I want to show you what we'd be looking for in terms of a base. So if it crosses through this area here, which is 0.007, it would then complete a base, a double bottom, and then we'd be looking at a much larger rally. Now, the nice thing about this, it does seem to trade well from a technical point of view. So when it's trading, when it's moving, the trend seems to continue. When it's basing, it makes classic technical patterns. That doesn't guarantee that it's going to do it, of course. It doesn't guarantee that the pattern's going to complete. But certain markets have certain signatures and characteristics, and this one seems to be, when it's trending, it trends very smoothly, and it's not particularly volatile in the short term either. So my summary for it would be, I'd be bullish here, but I need it to really, to confirm the base, I need it to break this level here. But I would be willing, because it's formed a higher low, to go with this upward trend, using this trend line as a stop. So if it breaks below this trend line, I'd be out and then looking elsewhere. Admittedly, again, it does look like a smaller project potentially. We'd have to find out what the actual size of the market cap and on the volume, etc. But looking at the actual chart, I can see that it doesn't look like it's that actively traded. So that has to be borne in mind as well. So that means one risk factor against it in terms of position size. But overall, it's basing and it's moving in the right direction, as is the rest of the market. So I'm going to go with it and say it's a buy.
Fantastic. I also rated a buy, though it's not as juicy of a buy as it was. Now, I have swapped recently some engine starter into Spores. And here's why. Like, I like both. I've been holding engine starter and I love it. The team behind it, the CEO came on our channel like a year and a half, 2 years ago. He is a solid guy, amazing thing. The only reason I swapped is because the market cap here is 20 something X over where Spores is. So probably Spores will somewhat close that gap. As I was processing on it, I was thinking, why not swap some of my engine starter into a much lower cap project? They both have kind of pumped recently. So it's not like I'm, selling at a loss to buy something that's pumped. I'm selling something that's pumped to roll into something that's cheaper that's pumped. So, but it's still a buy for me on engine starter. I just want to give complete full disclosure. Did I just roll more money into this? No, I actually just took some out to buy something that was cheaper, but it's still a buy for me because I've had engine starter for a long time and I believe in where it's going and I still have a bunch. I just want to roll that into something with a lower market cap. And at this price, it's really just retesting this resistance. And whether it breaks through it this time or it breaks through it in the future, I don't know. But the difference between this low and this high, it isn't all that great. So in the market cap, still fairly low. Now, where can something like this go? Possibly $1 billion market cap. So about 50x from here. I'm just hoping that Spores does 100x from here. And so that's why I flipped some of that money over. Spores is a little bit riskier than engine starter, but higher upside. So engine starter is one of the launch pads that gets the most traction, at least historically. So cool. Great suggestions by everyone. It's a buy for me. Let's jump over to Wanchain, one of the viewer suggestions. And you had already been looking at Wanchain.
Yeah. Let's just jump over and have a look on trading view because that's where we had the lines from before. So I'll go back to a daily chart. I just wonder whether there was any activity in this range, because this to me looks like it's forming a base and it is trying to complete that base as we speak. So overall, it's still sideways. So it went from kind of potential breakout buy here to it's got a bit neutral and it's going sideways. Still overall have a bullish bias on it, but we just needed to get some confirmation. Now that looked like that started here, but it seems to have found resistance once again at the top of this range, but it's still in a spacing phase. So I'm gonna have to say I think it's getting close to the point where I think there's going to be a rotation from some of the other markets that have already moved into the ones that haven't, and this is one that hasn't moved. Wouldn't take much to make this look really bullish if it got through this 30 cents area. That is big resistance, but this is starting time wise to look like it's ready to go. So if I put that in the middle and say the time that it's taken to make this left base against this right base, we should be rallying fairly soon. So in that regard, it could be a very speculative buy ahead of that move. But the way I am, I tend to like the market to confirm first before jumping in. So I'm going to say it's a wait just at this point in time, but I'd be closely monitoring it for signs that it's going to start to accelerate, because I wouldn't want to miss it if it was going through this 30 cents area, 29 cents. If it breaks that, to me, it's really gearing up for a move. And here, where all this resistance is around 35, 36, that's very interesting. If it gets through there, then I would feel much more confident in it completing a base. So it's looking good overall. It's just it hasn't moved yet, and I'm just waiting for it to take out a key resistance point. So it's a wait, but a close monitor.
Yeah, it is looking good. Like its base is likely in likely built, and it's kind of like the launch pad getting ready for the rocket to take off. So I like where it's at. While I was covering Spores, I forgot to address Chris's question. Hey Jay, do you think Spores will match or exceed its previous all-time high this bull run? I'm hoping that it at least matches, because at least matching would be 100x from here. And if it goes 100x from here, I'm gonna have taken most of my profits out. Probably not all of them, but a lot of them. And then some further moon bag in case it does better. But you know, like 50x from where it's been, I'm gonna start taking profits off, because that's pretty amazing return. And so what I'm really looking for is when things go crazy and these launchpad tokens are all everybody's discussing, whatever the price is at that point tells me to start dollar cost averaging out and taking some profits. All right, Wanchain, obviously a strategic partner of the channel, and I should be able to do a live stream this Friday and be able to give away some Wanchain. That strategic partnership allows us to have WAN tokens to give away, and it's a substantial amount of WAN. So it's 500 WAN when we do our giveaways, which is $100 worth of Wanchain at these prices. Now that's at these prices. If it goes crazy from here, then yeah, like 500 WAN can end up being a lot. Now you see historically that Wanchain, it only shows $9.21 here, but it hit just under $10, and 500 WAN at $10 for winning a giveaway is sizable. In order to win the giveaway, I do strongly suggest you follow them really closely on Twitter, because that's where a lot of my questions come from. I like the price. I hold Wanchain myself, and I rated a buy. I like this little zone before the confirmation that it's going to run up, because usually after the confirmation, it's a lot more expensive. And whether it's ready to run up now or it's ready to run up in 6 months from now or a year from now, I'm happy with that either way. Now, one of the downsides of Wanchain is that the market cap is higher than a lot of what I would love for it to be at, but it's extremely low, in my opinion, for what Wanchain is. And so though 40 million is a lot higher than we were just talking about Spores market cap at like 800,000, for what Wanchain is and the team they have behind it, I can't even believe it's at these numbers. So I'm as happy as a kid in a candy store with prices like where they're at with.
I don't see the comments unless you put them up on the screen. Yeah, sorry.
Let me see what we got. One for Solan, NTX, if there's enough time. Let's look at Solan, because it's in the Solana ecosystem. And gosh, we'll go through Solan really fast, then we'll go through Bump, because Bump, I'm really loving at current prices, and I actually bought some more. But we haven't looked at the Solana ecosystem as closely. And I did rate the Solana ecosystem a few weeks ago as massively underpriced. And now a lot of interest has come into the Solana ecosystem, and those prices are not as devastatingly low, but I haven't looked specifically at Solan. I do have a bag of Solan that I am just holding on to and waiting. Our good friends at Alameda Research, from my understanding, helped absolutely tank this token price. Okay, that wasn't fun. But hopefully by our good friends, I don't really mean our good friends at Alameda Research. That was very facetious. Yeah, not happy about what they did. But this project so far is surviving. And if they do, they could do quite well.
Yeah, so the it's very volatile. It's quite an odd looking chart, really. I don't see ones that look quite like this. Just going to make sure that's up to date. It is. Overall, it looks like this is basing, and it's starting to break out from this base. It's the highest price that we've seen, from the November 22. So coming into about a year, it's taken to do this, holding this base. So it's at the top end of that. There is some resistance from here all the way up to 0.81. So it's pushing against some wood that it's got to chop, if you like. But overall, given how volatile it is, look at the way it trades in such a strange way. you see some really strange moves. I don't know whether it's going to move into a nice smooth upward trend or not, but normally you would see that after the market is based like this. So what would I want to do? I mean, I would give it a go. I would buy it, given that it's based. I'd prefer it a little bit higher through this 0.81, just because that's where the resistance is. But I'm in that sort of mood at the moment, so I would go with it. But if it just came straight back down again, it wouldn't surprise me, because it's at the moment it's got that sort of signature about it. It's fairly balanced in terms of 60-40 to the upside as to where it is now. So I would totally accept if it didn't work. But for choice, it would be a buy, given that everything else is moving. It's at the top of the range and it's at least trying to break out.
Yeah, I think some of the updates that they made to the Solana ecosystem are really encouraging. Solana got a lot of traction a year and a half ago, and it was, everyone that was getting really big on Solana and, oh, this is the Ethereum killer and it's going to outperform all the other third generation blockchains. And then it started crashing. Oh, it's the fastest. Yeah, and then it was crashing, and a lot of the other third generation blockchains hadn't crashed. So it really kind of told us that Solana was not as ready as they were thinking it was. And it started to crash. And then one of the big backers really pushing for Solana was Sam Bankman-Fried. And well, it turned out we learned some things about him we didn't know, and some things about Alameda Research we didn't know. And they had backed this project. And I learned some things from a company that Alameda Research had been the market maker for. And according to that company, they said that Alameda Research dumped their token on everyone, destroying the value in the project and crippling people who had invested in that project. And that this wasn't the only time they had done that. And then all of a sudden, why their chart was acting so weird made sense to me, because there were very few tokens being held during this period where the price was just dumping all the way to the ground. I was like, what could be dumping this price? There's not enough people that would have tokens at a profit that could be dumping it down to this. And then when I heard those stories about what Alameda Research had supposedly done with other companies, it all made sense. So hopefully they survive it. I was checking out their Twitter, and they're very active on Twitter. I like to see that. And so I'm just holding my bag. I mean, Axie Infinity jumped on me tremendously over 18 months before it did incredible numbers for me. So hopefully Solan does the same thing. Let's jump over to Bumper. We won't have time for the exit song because I'll have to go right into another meeting. But great question on Bumper. And I'm really excited about where the price is at personally.
Yeah, finally it's digging its heels in and finding a bit of support. So since the recent announcement, or not so recent as the case may be, it's come back down and it's found some support finally, and it's had a decent first step. Now, it's obviously not enough to turn the whole of this trend around, but it's a good start, and it's happening at a higher low, which again is important. Now, I always thought that this was forming an inverse head and shoulders, even though it's extremely messy. Left shoulder head, right shoulder should have really have broken out here, but it came with that news, which often is a contrary thing. So we wait for the retracement, and then when people give up on it, wait until it starts to go back up again, and it's its base will be forming, and hopefully patience will pay off for holding it. So for me, it's a buy. It's a buy now. And I would also say that if it breaks below this this level here, this 2.8 cents area, I would get out. So I'm leaving a very small margin. So I want it to go up here now, because the base is now not confirmed until we take out this 10 cents area, and that's quite a rally. So it's got a lot of work to do, but this could be the first step. So I'm willing to give that a chance at this point. But if it doesn't move, then it's going to look a little bit out of place given where everything else is, and I wouldn't like that. So for me, it's a buy, but it's I would be getting out if it takes out this low.
Perfect. One of the things I love about having YouTube channels, because remember, I'm an investor first. But as just an investor, I couldn't ever get to talk to the teams behind the companies, because you could have $40 million or $40,000 or sometimes even $400,000 invested in a project, and you can't get like a face-to-face or video call with them. But having a YouTube channel, you can get them to come on. And I hope you checked out the recent interview we did with the team. Sam was amazing in giving us some time, and I was far more bullish after that. I was already bullish before that discussion. That discussion helped me feel good about the fundamentals behind the project. One of the things he shared, and he might have shared this in the private chat he did with just our Discord community after, was that they have 2 years of funds available. Like, so basically they're with what their burn rate is and how much they have set aside, they could continue burning at a lot for a couple of years and still be fine. And I loved hearing that. I'm very bullish on the things that I heard from that interview. And also yesterday, interviewed David from Mcade, made me even more bullish on the OMI token. So those interviews give us insights I never got as just an investor, which is one of the reasons I had to create a YouTube channel. And I made the agreement with all of you when this channel was brand new. Help me grow this YouTube channel, and I'll be able to get bigger and bigger interviews, and together we'll get to ask questions that we would never get to ask as just investors. So thank you for helping me grow this channel and helping grow the family. This is geared towards the hope is highest returns on average per community member in the whole of the crypto space. And we just might do that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Paul, so much for joining us. We appreciate everyone's thoughts. I wish I could have gone into more. Yeah, just pushed up against the timeline.
My pleasure.
Thank you, all of us, for joining us. One of the quick questions, exit song to listen to in a separate video. I think at one point, like a year and a half ago, we did upload it. If you go to the channel and you search like Rainmaker, maybe you'll find it. I think it is a standalone somewhere on the YouTube channel. If not, then gosh, you might have to clip it or something. It is not at the end of every video, but pretty much the end of every video with Paul too. Thanks so much, everyone. See you soon.